Hello, my name is Mikhail, and in this presentation, I'd like to discuss ancient Greek comedy and how it evolved over time. According to Aristotle, Greek comedy arose from phallic songs sung at religious processions, though by the mid 5th century BCE, it had grown to be a respected and structured art form celebrated through plays at festivals like the Linnea and Dionysia. One of the most prominent early contributors to Greek comedy was Aristophanes, and his work was so influential that his death quite literally marks the end of an era, both by modern and ancient scholars of Greek comedy. Comedy then began to change shape until a new style emerged after the death of Alexander the Great, called New Comedy, and Menander is the most prominent playwright of this period. So, how are they different? Well, someone like Aristophanes is much more characteristically crass. He uses fart jokes, sexual innuendos, he breaks the fourth wall, he's very ironic and self aware. But at the same time, he's a very sharp social and political critic. He does not shy away from portraying real people in his plays, no matter how revered they are. He believed no one was above satire, and this included historical contemporaries of his like Socrates and Cleon, and even extended to mythological gods. And I think a couple quotes that capture this element of his spirit are: under every stone lurks a politician, and comedy too can sometimes discern what is right. This contrasts with Menander, who himself was born into aristocracy and was pretty close buddies with an Athenian dictator of his lifetime. His work and that of New Comedy overall is a lot softer around the edges. There's a distinct lack of political or social criticism. It's more like exploration, and there's no real people portrayed. Instead, there are stock archetypes or stereotypical characters. There's generally a happy ending in new comedies. They're more lighthearted, which might indicate that they could be a nice source of escape for the average Greek citizen at the time. Some modern parallels might be like Menander is closer to an 80s sitcom like Full House, whereas Aristophanes is closer to Saturday Night Live if it existed in ancient Greece. I'd like to explore a work of theirs each, starting with Aristophanes the Frogs, the premise of which is Dionysus, the Greek god of theater, is so distraught at the state of Athens' plays after the death of Euripides, who was a famed tragic playwright. He decides to venture to Hades and bring him back to life because Athens' tragedy scene just sucks without him. So there's a lot of jokes at Dionysus' expense, and the play itself begins in a very self-referential way with Dionysus and his slave Xanthias arguing over which jokes would be best to start the play itself. Then the first half of the play has Dionysus getting into all sorts of shenanigans on his way to hell, trying to dress up as more of a warrior than he really is, and trading clothes with his slave anytime that comes back to bite him. As he crosses a lake to get to hell, he encounters some frogs, and he's so irritated by them that, like a kid, he starts mocking them and croaking back at them, which we wouldn't expect from a god. Eventually, he does find Euripides arguing with Aeschylus, who is another tragic playwright, over who's the best of all time. What amounts to a rap battle ensues, and Dionysus is brought in as the judge, and from here on out, he's portrayed in a much more respectable manner. They trade verses, mocking each other until they devolve into just repeating the same insults and interrupting each other. Dionysus, almost like frogs, Dionysus has enough of this and has them place their words on a scale to determine whose have more weight. After a few more twists and turns, Aeschylus is chosen to come back to life and restore Athens' tragic scene. And on his way out of hell, he looks back and he says, "Don't let Euripides have my seat," which is like the comedic climax of the play. This contrasts with Discalus, which translates to the Grump, by Menander. It's the story of a grumpy old man who doesn't want to let his daughter date. However, he has a near-death experience falling down a well, where he has a change of heart and allows the love interest to marry his daughter. There is a god in the play, but he is not portrayed in a negative light and mostly serves as an omniscient narrator. And there's a lot more emphasis on things that the average Greek audience could relate to, like grumpy in-laws. And there's a moral lesson about not letting your bitterness inhibit the happiness of others around you. And by the end of the play, the Grump Knemon is dancing and has let his grumpiness shed away. So those are some brief differences between Greek Old and New comedy.